Good evening, our esteemed viewers, and welcome to yet another exciting episode of the National Economic Indaba Show. To those that are joining us via our social media platforms, I would like to welcome you, and to those that are joining us via television as well. Today we have an exciting guest for you in the studio. His name is Mr. Malcolm Shabala, and he is a banking and finance expert with more than 21 years in the industry. He has served as NATSEF CEO, Director for Banking and Mortgages at Zambia National Building Society, among other portfolios. I tell you viewers, if I have to outline all his portfolios, it will take us the whole interview. So Mr. Chabala, you're welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, and thank you for that warm introduction.
You're welcome. It's always interesting for me to read through how many, things people have actually done in their lives. And I always feel intimidated. I'm like, am I the correct person to sit, with such type of, expertise?
You are well qualified to be in that seat.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited that you are with us on this show. Today we're talking all things SMEs, MSMEs. Would like for you, with all your expertise, to just bring it home for us, especially for the layman out there. So as we begin the show, I would just like you to maybe just tell us what are the typical characteristics of SMEs in Zambia.
All right. Mm-hmm. Well, no, thank you so much, and good evening to the viewers out there. So, and I'm glad you speak about MSMEs, because then it's not just about SMEs, but we are talking about MSMEs, so that's micro, small, and medium enterprises.
Yes, absolutely.
So we're really looking at companies, and there are various definitions. So depending on who you ask, each of the banks have their own definition of who's an MSME. You go to associations, they'll have different definitions. You go to the government, they'll have their own definition. But also organizations such as the World Bank and IMF also have definitions.
Why is that?
Yeah, so I think because of different circumstances, right? So when you look at an international bank, what they would define as an MSME or an SME is very different because they're looking at it from a global perspective. When you come to a local bank or a local financial institution, they'll be looking at somebody maybe at Chisokone Market, at Soweto Market, at Masala Market, because that's what we are used to. You go to the IMF, they look at all the countries, or the World Bank, they look at all the countries. So it's very normal that there will be different definitions. So for us in Zambia, let's just look at it as an organization that is neither a multinational corporation, and it's also not a local large corporate. Okay. So anything below that will classify as an SME. But when you come to MSMEs, then we start now going down to the markets. We're going into the compounds and the villages, because even that one person who's running a small shop in Temba is an SME. So the definitions will vary depending on circumstances. But for us, let's just say any entity that's not a multinational corporation or a local large corporate.
Wow, interesting to note. So what are most of the popular financing options for these MSMEs in this country?
Yeah, and again, given their diverse nature, so there'll be various needs, but typically they'll be looking for two types of financing. So one, they'll be looking for capital financing or investment financing, which you normally find in the class of a loan. Or a lease facility, maybe for equipment or motor vehicles. Then other than that, the second stream or the second type of financing they'll be looking for is what we call working capital. So working capital is what you require to meet your daily operational needs. So money to finance fuel, money to finance communication, money to finance salaries, money to finance the purchase of stock. So that is a working capital. So I'll put them in two classes, working capital as well as long-term financing requirements. Yeah.
So what are the challenges they face in accessing this finance? Especially I've heard you say they would actually go to look for finance for things like money for fuel.
Yeah.
So what challenges would, I imagine that it wouldn't be easy for an institution to give out that kind of money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll put the challenges in two buckets. One is, let's start with the SMEs themselves, or the MSMEs. They have a number of challenges that lead to them not being able to access finance. So typically you find that they don't keep their records. To access finance, you need records. You can't just say, no, I make profits. How do you prove it?
Exactly.
So you need records such as financial statements. You need your bank statements to show that you've been banking the funds. You need your bookkeeping records, your basic profit and loss account, and the balance sheet. So you find that most of them don't record, right? And then in Zambia, historically, we've always had a problem with credit discipline. So in previous cases and circumstances where financing institutions have tried to give SMEs or MSMEs money, that money is diverted from the business. You find that maybe they go and buy an expensive vehicle, they buy an expensive phone, or they go on a holiday. But that money is meant for business. And the result is that they start failing to pay. And then everybody now is labeled, in that group as SMEs don't pay. They're not disciplined when it comes to finances. So those are some of the challenges, but there are also challenges from the banking side or the financial institution side. They typically do not understand the SMEs because the banks were not built to deal with that type of customer. So their products are designed for organized corporations which have proper corporate governance in place. They have proper records and systems. They're able to produce financial statements. They are able to produce annual reports. They have a board, things like that. So a typical bank, especially a few years ago, did not know how to handle MSMEs because they were not built to deal with MSMEs.
Has that changed now? Do we see banks actually catering to this demographic now?
Yes, so over the years, let me say maybe in the last 20, 25 years, maybe less, there's been some transformation. There's been a recognition that SMEs, MSMEs are critical to the economy. They're critical to the market. They're critical to the banking sector itself. So what you've seen is that a number of banks that typically were not taking care of SMEs have created departments. Now you've got SME banking. They've got SME relationship managers. These are things that were not there before. And in the Zambian case, actually, we're quite fortunate because when the new government came into place, they actually created a Ministry of SME Development. And there's a full cabinet minister there who sits in cabinet meetings and reports directly to the president, whose sole mandate is to look at SME development in the country. So those are positive strides that have been made. Among others, we've seen the introduction of the Zambia Credit Guarantee Scheme. We've seen the introduction of the Citizen Economic Empowerment Commission. We've seen the introduction of the SME policy, a government policy meant to drive SME development. So in the last few years, there have been a number of strides that have been made towards recognizing the importance of SMEs.
Great stuff, Mr. Chavala. So what are typically the interest rates and repayment terms for SME loans in the nation? I know that you've been in the banking sector forever.
Yes, that's correct. So yes, so interest rates in Zambia have been typically high, and more so for SMEs because one of the factors that goes into pricing a facility, whether it be loan, overdraft, or any other, is the risk profile. So I cannot lie to you, if an SME was going to borrow, it would typically be at a higher interest rate. So typically in Zambia, the interest rates at the moment are sitting 20% plus and above, some hovering close to 30%. And that's in your traditional commercial banks. When you go to microfinance institutions, and worse still, if you go to loan sharks and money lenders, you can be paying anything from 50% to 100% on the money that you're borrowing. So it's not it's not cheap. It's quite expensive for SMEs to borrow in Zambia.
Is it even worth it for them to borrow? Because by the end of the day, won't they put themselves in more, problems than they were before they even went to borrow this money?
So, debt is not necessarily a bad thing.
Okay.
It's actually a good thing, but it has to be managed, and you have to borrow at the correct time.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you're just a startup, I wouldn't advise you to take a loan.
Okay.
Because normally when you take a loan, the repayment kicks in the following month.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've just started a business, chances are that you don't have any sales, but you have to start repaying the loan.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not the best mode to finance a startup or a small business.
Mm-hmm.
What you should be looking to do is maybe look at your own savings, your own money, family, friends,
Mm-hmm.
if they can put in money, but also look for impact investors,
Mm-hmm.
angel investors.
Mm-hmm.
Look for grants, money that you don't have to pay back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and also look for concessional loans if you have to get a loan. So they have to be at a very low rate, and normally it's impact funds that are intended to grow you,
Mm-hmm.
not a normal market commercial loan. It will kill your business even before it starts.
Interesting. And I was going to ask, maybe you can still respond to this one, because after what you've said, I don't know if it's relevant, but
Yeah.
are there specialized financial packages tailored for SMEs then?
Yes. So first of all, like I said, let me just clear up the fact that debt is not necessarily a bad thing. So countries themselves survive on debt. That's why governments borrow.
Yeah.
America itself is it's the biggest borrower in the world.
Okay.
So we all admire America, but if you look at the exposure in terms of government securities, how much they've borrowed, it's in trillions of dollars.
Okay.
So leverage is actually a good thing. Using somebody else's money to grow your business is a good thing, but you need to have the skill to do that. So coming to your question now, yes, there are products that are specific to SMEs. So your traditional loan may not be the best for you. So depending on what you're trying to finance, I think that's very, very important. So if you're financing working capital, those are operational needs, stock, salaries, all the operational costs, communication, movement, you get an overdraft facility, not a loan. Because an overdraft facility, you are in control. You pay anytime when you have money, you can pay to reduce it, and you're only charged interest to the extent that you've accessed the facility. But when you get a loan, they will disbase the full amount and they'll start charging you interest on the full amount. So loans usually are of a long-term nature. So overdraft typically is 1 year. Loans, it will be anything from can be above 1 year, maybe 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, depending on the term. So loans usually you want to use that for capital items. So a vehicle, to purchase a building, to purchase machinery, use a loan. But don't use a loan for working capital requirements like stocking up your shop, paying salaries and fuel. Use an overdraft for that. But there are also specialized products which work very well for SMEs. So there's what we call invoice discounting. It's a very short-term facility. So if you've supplied something to a big corporation, a multinational, and you've invoiced them, based off the strength of that invoice, you can go to a financial institution and ask for financing for just those days. Maybe within 90 days they'll pay you. So you just get a facility maybe for 30 days, 60 days or 90 days. Then when they pay you for what you supplied, you pay the financial institution. There's also order finance. When a company gives you an order, a big company, they give you an order. Off the strength of that, you can go to a financial institution and approach them for financing to just finance that order.
That with the volatility of the exchange rate, isn't this becoming a real big problem for the SME?
It's a big problem, especially if you are import-based. So basically you buy things from outside Zambia. Every time that the kwacha depreciates, it means you need more kwacha to buy the same amount of dollars, pounds, or rand, or euros to buy the same amount of goods. So if you are an import-based SME trader, you are really, really affected, because then the depreciation of the kwacha eats into your margins, and you may find yourself underwater or in a loss.
Indeed, indeed. So then what other, alternative financing exists for SMEs? I've heard of things like crowdfunding. Could you just expand on that? I know that you're the right person to give us all the data on this.
Yes, so it's good that the financial sector is developing in Zambia. So we have a number of institutions that are not your traditional banks that are out there that are willing to be creative and innovative in coming up with solutions. So crowdfunding is one of them that you can look at. If you have a very good product, you have a very good idea, you can package it and then advertise, whether in your network or publicly, that if people put in money in the business, and it has to be a viable business, they'll be able to get this return. So what you do there is, say you require 10 million kwacha for a particular project that you have, and you may not find somebody with 10 million to give you, but you may find hundreds or thousands of people that can put in small amounts of money, and it all aggregates into a crowd fund. So that's one of them. The other innovative ways, like I said, there's invoice discounting, there's order financing, but also there are impact investors. There are also angel investors. So sometimes it's lack of information, we can't find them. But if you just Google in Zambia, they are there. And sometimes they run workshops and seminars. They are looking for businesses. They're looking for ideas to fund. I know UBA, they've got the Tony Emulu Foundation from Nigeria. I think they give $5,000 per idea. So again, people should apply for that. Places like the EU, AFDB, and other multinational organizations, they always have funds or grants, or at least concession rate loans that you can access.
Interesting. So, are there regulatory frameworks in place to support these alternative financing options for the MSMEs?
Yeah, so I think the important part, like I said already, the good thing is that a ministry has actually been set up, the Ministry of SME Development. So they've worked on a number of frameworks, they've worked on a number of procedures, they've worked on a number of statutory instruments to kickstart SMEs in the country, or to support the growth of SMEs in the country. They have an SME policy, and I think for SMEs we need to read that, because behind that policy there's also some frameworks. There's operational frameworks. There are regulations. So there's a lot that people do not see that actually is out there that can support SMEs. Like I've said, the government has come up with the Zambia Credit Guarantee Scheme. This is intended to de-risk SMEs. So they guarantee financial institutions, say if you lend to an SME, we'll give you a guarantee up to a certain level. So you won't lose all the money in case the business fails. The government will be able to cushion you. So that is in place. There's also the Citizenship Empowerment Commission, which I said, so that's in place. Other than that, there's actually an act, Movable Goods Act. So what that does is, even if you don't have a house to pledge as security or a property, you may have stock, you may have a car, you may have a TV, you may have other household goods that you can pledge as security. So all those frameworks, regulations and guidelines and incentives and initiatives are there to support the growth of SMEs. Can we do enough as a country? Yes, we can, but at least the first steps have been made. And it's up to the SMEs to take advantage of these opportunities that are there being provided by the government and financial institutions.
Great stuff. So are there any successful models, or case studies of SME financing that can be replicated or upscaled in Zambia?
There are plenty.
Okay.
So what we need to appreciate is that 80% of businesses in Zambia are SMEs. So that in itself is a success story. More than 80% of employment in Zambia is with SMEs. It's not with the big companies and the government. So that in itself is a success story. But also when you go to places like the Zambia Development Agency, ZDA, you go to Zambia Credit Guarantee Scheme, they'll be able to show you SMEs which they've actually successfully funded and supported, and they've been able to grow, in their businesses. So the information is out there. Ministry of Commerce and Industry also keeps databases of these companies that have been successful. If you go to the multi-facility economic zones across the country, you'll find companies there that are operating, that have been supported through these government programs. Also, the Ministry of SME runs industrial parks across the country. You'll be able to see successful companies there in various sectors. Some are in fisheries, some are in the hotel industry, and some are in manufacturing, that are actually doing very, very well. We could do with a lot more success stories. I think people have a negative view of SMEs, and typically maybe the ones that get publicized are the stories which have failed or haven't worked well. But just by going by the fact that 80%, more than 80% of the companies in Zambia are SMEs, more than 80% of employment in Zambia is offered through SMEs. So that's a good story.
Great stuff. In case you're just joining us, viewers, we are, have on the program Mr. Malcolm Chabala, who is, immediate past CEO for NATSEV, and he is here to talk all things MSMEs with us. Those that are joining us via our social media platforms, those that are just joining now, you're welcome. So, Mr. Chabala, are there tax incentives or subsidies available for SMEs in Zambia, and what policy changes would you like to see implemented that can beneficiate the MSMEs?
Yes, so I think what I would say is every year, when the budget is released, there's always incentives that are provided, tax incentives, and I would encourage again the SMEs and MSMEs and the public to always study the budget and look for business opportunities. We shouldn't just see the budget as, oh no, they'll tax us, but it's a give and take. So I know in this year's budget, and I think even the previous budget, their incentives are around alternative energy. So if you are in that business, this is an opportunity for you to grow your business and make a lot of money, because they've waived tax on alternative energy, so solar equipment and things like that, inverters that you can bring in and sell. So that means your margins will be a lot wider. So that's that. I know typically there will also be incentives for tourism, those that are in the tourism sector. So you can be running a lodge, and you'll be able to bring in equipment such as maybe those vans that are used for safaris. If you are in Livingstone or in Zambezi or you're in Luangwa, you do that. Or you just run a vehicle hire company. You can actually have those two safari vans, and they also come in at an incentive. You won't be paying the normal price for a vehicle in terms of tax. So those are things that I would encourage MSMEs that are in different sectors just to read the budget, what has been offered in each of the sectors. The government always does a give and take when it comes to taxes. So depending on the situation, if there's a drought like we had experienced, you find that the government may waive taxes maybe on irrigation equipment. So if you're in agric and you're a trader in irrigation equipment, you take advantage of such incentives.
Great stuff. So as we are winding down the program, I would like us now to talk about the National Economic Indaba. Why is such a program important, and what are the expected outcomes?
Yeah, so Indaba is very important, and for us we need to continue having these discussions because it's a gathering, right? So it's a gathering of key stakeholders. It's a gathering of people that want to make a difference. So specifically for MSMEs, it is a platform to hear what is happening in the economy. What is the government view? What are the financial institutions thinking, and what incentives do they have? What facilities do they have? What products do they have? But it's also a platform for MSMEs to hear their views and ask the questions, right? So some of the questions that you were asking, we'll delve into them at the National Indaba, break them down, but also it's a networking platform. So during the National Indaba, deals can be brokered, connections can be made. So you have access to these people, right? You exchange business cards, contact details. And beyond the Indaba, it's about how do we execute and implement on all these things that we've discussed. But it provides a platform for everyone to come together, information to be collected, information to be processed, and then packaged into action points and resolutions. Then those should be followed through. What is the private sector going to do? What is the government going to do? What are the other civil society organizations going to do? What is going to be done by the actual businesses to make sure that we move the country forward, and specifically move the MSMEs forward? So it's a very, very good and important platform, and really looking forward to it.
And what type of people, apart from the ones that you've mentioned, are there any other type of people you would specifically like to see at the Indaba?
So typically what we'd want is obviously policymakers, government to be there. We want the MSMEs themselves to be there because they are the largest stakeholders. We want the big businesses to be there because they either buy from MSMEs or the MSMEs buy from them. So it's very important that we have those. We want the media to be there because then the information can be collected and disseminated. We want civil society to be there. We want influencers to be there. We want financial institutions to be there because then they can understand the MSMEs a little bit better and develop products that meet their needs and identify financing opportunities. So it's a win-win situation. You want your MPs there so that when they go back to the constituencies, they're able to articulate these things. You want your traders, your investors to be there. So there's room for everyone at the National Economic Indaba.
Great stuff indeed. Thank you so much. For me, this has been very, very informative, and I'm very happy that you took time off your very busy schedule to just come and have this very important conversation for the people out there to understand about the Indaba, and also to just edge on the SMEs. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There you have it, viewers, on the program, the National Economic Indaba Show, which comes to you every Monday and Friday, where we have different people come through to just speak to the issue of MSMEs, and also the forthcoming Indaba that will be there in July. Thank you so much that you took time, to watch, and I hope that the program has been able to highlight to you the important things and the questions that you may have had as an MSME. And, until the next guest on Monday, we are grateful that you could take time to join us. My name is Nakiwa Simpungo. On behalf of the studio crew, until Monday, it's good evening.